Hey, I'm Guy, and that's John.
Yes, it is. Subscribe to the page, like the video, check out the podcast below in the description.
And our sponsor, wineaccess.com/ham. Get you 20% off from $15 bottles to $300 bottles. They got something for everybody.
Guys, send a gift right now. Family, friends, parents, sisters, loved ones. Do it right now. Wineaccess.com/ham. 20% off.
All right, John, what do you think of this? Matt Barrows, who covers the Niners for The Athletic, in a mailbag was asked how much input does Mike Shanahan have on the next quarterback. Look at what he wrote. Earlier this month, I called Mike to talk about his quarterback philosophy in general and to discuss his 2012 QB search in Washington. When he called back, the 49ers headquarters phone number registered on my phone. He was calling from Kyle's office. The call is coming from inside the building.
I don't find that really that weird. Do you?
I don't find it weird. I also think but I think it's great insight from Matt because I think the way that we've always talked about Mike is Mike's got his office at home. Kyle talks to him on the phone every day after Mike watches the practice film, after Mike watches the quarterbacks. I don't think, when you think about it, it makes complete sense because we know that he leans on his dad. We know that, we mentioned it the other day, Michael Lombardi saying repeatedly, he doesn't just say Kyle Shanahan, he says the Shanahans. You and I have talked about it's not weird given Mike's history. But the idea that he's there in the office, walking around in his socks like every other coach they're grinding, I don't think we've necessarily just visualized it that way. That's why I think this is really good insight, intel.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be naive to think it just someone is like, whoa, didn't see that coming, that he's not playing a major role. I mean, when you think about the connection of how Kyle found his general manager, John Lynch, was Mike Shanahan, right? John Lynch played for Mike Shanahan in Denver. So the connection, I think, in just a random person, you could say, God, there might be, is Mike Shanahan have more pull in the front office? Like, they're all kind of interconnected. And back to Mike Shanahan, he's a pretty accomplished individual in the sport. That to me, if it was a random coach, I feel better about it knowing that, like, this guy kind of knows what he's doing. Now, it doesn't mean he's right on everything. He's had some historic misses, just like any coach has. If you coach for 20, 25, 30 years, Belichick, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Mike Shanahan, whoever, Pete Carroll, you're going to have some disastrous picks. I also think we get hammered home. I was arguing, I don't know why I was doing this. It's why I deleted it from my phone, but on my desktop, on Twitter with Veach has missed all these picks. The point of the sport is to win games on Sunday. So whether you miss some free agency, whether you miss on some draft picks, it's ultimately to win. And so whatever Kyle has to do to get to the point where no one cares, like, he hit on a 5th round pick. Well, that's cool but no one cares if you win 5 games. And it's also easier on teams for later round picks to make it on bad teams. It's harder to make, like historically, for 5th round picks to make the Patriots, for example. And the Niners are kind of in this middle ground where they actually have a pretty talented roster. They're coming off the season where they didn't win that much. Maybe he just helps a little bit, and maybe he has the whole time. It feels like it's much more under a microscope with this trade, that Mike's role. Maybe he's played a massive role for the last 4 years. I don't know. We just haven't been on the scent, haven't been talking about it. Because we've been at practice, and I've seen him there walking on the other side. So it's not that weird.
Again, you and I have talked about this before. When someone's breaking down your film every day, right? You think that's just for fun? You think Kyle's just like, I'm sure it's fun for Mike, but I just mean, you think Kyle doesn't get on the phone with Mike, and then what does Mike want to talk about? The film. And you don't think that stuff matters to Kyle? Because it should. Keep in mind, Mike Shanahan, he is retired, yes, but Mike Shanahan is the same age. He's, the Pete Carroll. He'd be one of the oldest coaches in the league right now, but he's 68, 69. That's Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, Bruce Arians. Like, he is that age. And I don't think there's any question he's still in it. And just think about it from Kyle's perspective. Like, if I was a Major League Baseball player and I grew up with my dad as my personal hitting coach, and that's what got me to the big leagues. My dad, let's say, was a big league skipper the whole time. Now he's a retired big league skipper. My swing, I'm in a slump. Who am I calling? My dad's maybe he's watching every game. Forget about me being in a slump. He's giving me notes. If my dad is, Barry Bonds, he's telling me what he sees in my swing. right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's really no different. And I think you hit on it. What makes the dynamic? One other thing I'll say before I get to that: if this was Mike Middlecoff, the former great NFL coach who'd won 2 Super Bowls with the Broncos, and he was a Niners advisor, you'd be like, oh yeah, isn't that pretty cool? Like, look, they got Mike Middlecoff, Niners advisor. Or if he was Mike Shanahan, but the head coach, was you and me, and we got to Mike Shanahan, we hired him as an advisor for the 49ers. We'd go, oh, that's cool. Look, another really smart voice in the thing.
But well, if it was, let's just say it was Bill Parcells, a younger version. He's old now, but like Bill Parcells, right? It wouldn't even feel that weird. No. It'd be like, oh, or Tom Coughlin.
It's cool that they all listen. But I think you hit on the main thing, which is this might not work if it wasn't Mike Shanahan and John Lynch, right? Tom Coughlin and John Lynch, or Bill Parcells and John Lynch. I give them a lot of credit. One thing we've seen from the beginning, Mayhew, Peters, Lynch, Shanahan with personnel control. We could go down the list. Parag's influence obviously matters. Like, even though there is a king, this is not a democracy. Kyle Shanahan is the king. Like, they are built like an organization that does take in many opinions before they make a decision.
Yeah.
Ultimately Kyle still gets to make it, but we're always like, does Kyle listen to anybody? It's like, yeah, Mike. Turns out, yes.
Yeah. Right?
So.
Yeah, I mean, would it totally shock you if I told you in like some of their really serious meetings that Mike Shanahan's sitting there? Like, I bet it's not one of those, when you're a little kid or whenever if depending on what you do for a living, if you get to an area, I'm sure it's like this probably in any business where it's like, hey, can you guys leave the room? We need to talk. Right? I mean, it happens to any younger person when you first kind of enter a company. You don't get to go into every interview every meeting. That like when certain people leave, like I would imagine like, hey, Dad, could you leave? Like that probably doesn't happen, right?
Mike?
Yeah. Could you close the door on your way out?
Well, and again, I know I've said this before, but it applies here. The other thing that makes this unique is that Mike was almost their coach when they hired Chip. So it's like,
yeah,
this is a pretty unique situation. But I'm with you. Like, I don't think we can be shocked by anything if it turns out in the end that, Kyle liked one guy, but Mike Shanahan is the one that talked him into another guy. Like, I don't think that's what is going on here.
I think it's a positive to have the guy around.
Yes. Yeah.
I think ultimately it's a net positive. Now, where it could get weird is if there were like the connection. Like, I think this is where John Lynch is very, very valuable. Part of the reason Balky and Harbaugh blew up is there was an insecurity from Balky, and probably Harbaugh too, but definitely Balky. I didn't play in the NFL. The Jim was the big star. I don't see there being that many insecurities with John Lynch, which would be easy, like General Patton, the guy that the Niners were interested in. He's now the Denver Broncos, George Payton, the Broncos GM, just a personnel guy, a John Schneider. It would be a little intimidating, right? What happens when you're like in a conversation and Kyle's there and like Mike disagrees with you?
Right.
That's where I think John Lynch is like, yeah, motherfucker, I'm a Hall of Famer too. Like, we can have a conversation.
Yeah,
and Mike, it doesn't even get that weird.
Right, because Mike is like, that's John Lynch. I have a lot of respect for John Lynch, right?
Yeah. I think it would have been a difficult spot for like a young up and coming. Even if it was like Adam Peters was the GM, it'd be a tough spot for him. It'd be a tough spot for an older like John Dorsey. I mean, it could create problems fast.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe, it probably is not going to get out, but there might have been some arguments over the years, right?
That's okay.
Yeah. Arguments are healthy. That's one thing you see a lot in these draft press conferences. Like, we welcome disagreements.
When we walk through that door, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.